Invincible.
Best to give me your loyalty. Best to give me your loyalty. Cause I'm taking the world, you'll see. Cause I'm taking the world, you'll see. They'll be calling me, calling me. They'll be calling me, calling me. They'll be calling me royalty.
What's up, everybody? It's been a while. It's late. It's 11:35 p.m. my time. But we're not letting that stop us. We're reading. It's been a while since we've read a book. I been taking some time off from the reading, and now I'm gonna get back into it. It's a very small book, about 120 pages, give or take. And this is actually a very amazing opportunity that I could read this live. I asked the author, and he gave me permission to read this book live. And this not only is an author that is a very good person, but an author I personally know. I call him Donnie, Don Nader. You know who you are. I'm reading Suck Up the Purple Buttermilk by Donald Steiger. Donald Otis Steiger. And he has 2 books. I'm going to read his first book, Suck Up the Purple Buttermilk. You can buy it on Amazon. I will link that in the description if you're watching on YouTube at The One Who Cares. If you're watching on Instagram, then we're going to be reading Suck Up the Purple Buttermilk. And this book is pretty interesting. It's a personal account of abuse. I'm reading the description on his Amazon page here. A 20-year heroin addiction to 33 years clean and sober, probably more than that now, and ongoing recovery. I have overcome incredible odds, turned disasters into success. My life has been full of learning experiences that will leave you breathless and uplift you to empower, enlighten, and guide your path to victory. My best to you, always, Donald Steiger. And I'm going to just start off by reading the back of the book, because no one ever reads the back of the book. So let's just take a look at this here. In Donald's words, I was sick and tired of going to bed hungry. There were nights when I would lie in my bed and fantasize about hamburgers and ice cream, tears running down my cheeks. The teachers would send me to the dunce room and say I was learning impaired, and basically labeled me retarded. Off to a very sad start. That is horrible that any teacher would do that, but let's continue. No one looked at my home life. No one had the time. Sometimes my mother would break out in a fit of rage and beat me for a variety of reasons. I was the oldest, and I looked like my father. I don't know what is worse, being loved for a few years or not at all. Either way, it hurts. I began to experiment more with alcohol, testing the waters, and enjoyed the warm glow a couple of shots could bring me. Doing speed was like kissing the face of God back then. I did a half of... Just let me rewind that. What a beautiful simile. Doing speed was like kissing the face of God back then. It paints a clear picture of how hard this addiction was. I did a half of dropper, and when that poppy hit my brain, all my worries and fears left me. And this is actually pretty good for me, because I'm kind of learning a lot about the terminology here. I don't know what a half of dropper is, but let's continue. I'll try to keep the commentary to a minimum. And when that poppy hit my brain, all my worries and fears left me. Instantly I realized my new passion, coping heroin. These, my drugs, turned out to be the God I was searching for all my life. I wrote this book in hopes of inspiring other children and teens seeing no way out, and other addicts needing someone with whom they can relate in order to bring spiritual, mental, and physical healing to their past and awaken in them the belief that you are not your history. Don Steiger. What a beautiful few words that we just read there. Don has been where most people could not imagine, and this book is his honest and daunting account of abuse, addiction, and recovery. Suck Up the Purple Buttermilk by Donald Otis Steiger. Flipping a couple pages here, we have a page. He wrote a message to Jacob. Sometimes we may get. I'm not a good reader when it comes to cursive. Sometimes we may make mistakes, but our past Damn, I'm the worst for not being able to read that. Continuing on, I'll have to ask him about it, what it really says. It is definitely heartfelt, and just looking at the words without even knowing the meaning, it feels pretty honorable, and I feel honored to have this book. He gifted this to me, by the way. Don has been where most people could not imagine. Forward. John Lynch. There's about 12 chapters, an appendix, a poem, index, and books recommended by the author. Be pleased, O Lord, to deliver me, O Lord, make haste to help me. Psalms 40:13. Author's acknowledgments. Why not read these? For their valued assistance in completing this project, I wish to thank the following people: John Lynch for his overall professional input, idea for the title, and belief in the purpose of history of this story; Jim Puzz for his patience and dedication in being responsible for grammar, punctuation, syntax, and manuscript format; Amy Puzz for the creation and design of the cover; Carol Womble, director of the Global Relationship Center in Naples, Florida, for her suggestion to include samples of how I write and spell words in my own unique way; Claire Cuisinia, that's a last name I can't pronounce, director of publishing for Chandler House Press in Worcester, Massachusetts, for her beneficial critique and comments regarding further elaboration in specific areas; my cousin Rebecca Trelefa and her husband John for her diligent and skilled work in formatting the manuscript for the ebook and hard copy publication; and finally to the photo lab technician Scott Wheeler and photographer Lucinda Young of Express Photo and Portrait Studio in Worcester, Massachusetts, for the book's well-done photo reproductions and back cover picture of the writer. Yes, there are pictures in this book, which I really do enjoy. Thank you. I appreciate it. Lunch tomorrow for sure, Scott. I also want to especially thank my dear family and friends for their continuous support throughout the writing of this straightforward book. My father, Donald E. Steiger, my son, Jesse Otis Steiger, and daughter, Amy Lynn Steiger, my Aunt Pat and her husband, Wally Dash, my Uncle Dick Becker, the first man to ever seriously talk to me about quitting smoking, and I did, Bill Eckerson and wife Andrea, who demonstrated the importance of steadfast friendship and the value of $1. Kevin Herred, a sensational mentor and longtime special friend. Steve Papas for his many hours of listening to me voice my concerns with much appreciated tolerance. Steve Cannoli, former Worcester resident, now living in Las Vegas, a successful Elvis impersonator, and keeping the spirit of the Kings alive. I planted the seed idea for his e-career, and it's still always growing. And my great personal friend for many years. All my running buddies at the YMCA, Mary Bean, formerly of Spectrum House, who went to bat for me when all the cards read 0, literally saving my neck and my life. Kenneth F. Candido, my probation officer back in the 80s, who successfully utilized a tough love approach with me before the term was ever popular, and is currently the clerk magistrate for the Dudley District Court. Pastor Chip Lizzato, Letizio, and his wife Carmen, and Artie Fitzwater of his ministry outreach. This is the foreword now. John Lynch, BA, Master in Fine Arts. Good night. I'm live streaming this on Instagram and YouTube. No one's watching anymore, but that will be amazing because I won't need to read the chat and I can just read the book. Here we go. Worcester, Massachusetts, native now, living and working in Los Angeles, California. He is currently employed by the hit series That 70s Show and involved in several independent film projects. Suck Up the Purple Buttermilk is a story of survival because Don Steiger is alive and well today. I can also confirm that fact. And only by the grace of God. He lived through a childhood of alienation and pain, of confusion and turmoil, from witnessing firsthand the atrocities of the infamous Watts riots of 1963 to being severely beaten and abused by babysitters and family alike. Don has lived a life that needs to be told. A promiscuous mother that drank, an unstable father who always on the move. Donnie desperately needed someone to reach out to, someone with whom to share his pain. Sadly, there was no one there. Don started drinking at an early age and later became addicted to drugs as a teenager, and the hellish journey of heroin addiction plagued him for over 20 years. It was only when he lost his closest and dearest friend to an overdose that Don opened his heart to a deeper level of personal faith. Thank God he did. For now, he can share his unbelievable courage through the 3 decades of life on the edge and the hope of helping other children who see no way out and other addicts who need someone with whom they can relate. This is the first-person account of a life. These pages are kind of hard to turn. Of a life that changed with every turn. It is a journey into a man's soul. Donnie shares his most intimate details and his most horrid memories, beginning with his childhood, then proceeding through his battle with heroin, and finally his recovery and message of hope. This message is an affirmation of faith, love, and triumph over addiction and despair. It displays all the tough, gritty atmospheres of Don's world in realistic, memorizing detail. Don has been where most people could not imagine. And this book is his honest, daunting account of abuse, addiction, and recovery. Finally, I would like to make a few closing remarks when Donnie informed me of his intention to write his memoir. The old adage that everyone thinks their life is a book initially rang in my head. In any case, I knew nothing of Don's life other than that his father had been friends with one of my favorite actors, Rod Steiger. Therefore, with curiosity, I listened intently to some of the experiences he related to me, and I was amazed from the start at this man's life. In turn, I began sharing part of my personal life with him, a victim myself of extreme identification. I hope that everyone who reads Don's story can take some small piece of it out of it to better his or her own lives. I know I have. To better his or her own lives. I know I have. Introduction. jumping on into the sauce. Here we go. My name is Don. This is a personal story of survival. I am part Cherokee Indian in my early 50s who lives in Worcester, Massachusetts. 16 years ago, I could not read or write. Today, I can. I was once addicted to heroin and alcohol. Now I live a normal, whatever that is, drug and alcohol-free life. If you carry away one message, one truth, my wish is that those who feel inadequate, those who need to start every day of their lives with drug or drink, will discover that there is hope. There is a way up and out of the madness. Life is short. Enjoy the journey while it remains. Don't miss your life by trying to block it out. Do not spend any time worrying about not knowing how to do something, because worry with never make you learn anything. I think I meant to say will never make you learn anything. And it sure won't bring anything back. Accepting the journey is the key to a happy life. By asking God for the strength to carry this out, one day at a time. My advice to the reader, embrace each day. I am on my journey, and you are on yours. And there's a picture of him and his parents when he was 2 months old, November 24th, 1950. What a beautiful first page. I am intrigued, and we're going to flip this page and read another. These pages are hard to read though, or to turn though. I gotta make sure that's this next page, which it looks like it is. Chapter 1. The journey begins. Alright. Dedicated to my mother, who has been my greatest teacher, teaching me forgiveness, love, faith, and has given me the greatest gift of all, life. To Mom, always your loving son, Donnie. Hello, Sifu, great story, and he speaks the truth that most should follow. Yes, this is going to be a really hard book to read. Hope you guys enjoy. Time to hit the ground running. Time to catch the train. The only time you are satisfied is when chaos feeds your brain. I like that. I think he's going to start each chapter with a poem. My name is Don Steiger, and I came into this world on September 23rd, 1950 at 3:20 in the morning. If I knew what was waiting for me, I probably would have tried to stay inside a little longer. The town I was thrown into was called Culver City, California. Don't ask me what I thought of Culver City because I never had a chance to live there. Right after I was born, my father bought a house in Hawthorne, a suburb of Los Angeles, home of the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean. Before I even knew what hit me, I was on the move. Moving would become as constant as going to the bathroom in my life, and I never got used to it. My mother, a sexy, flamboyant woman named Sue Holman, and my father, the smooth-talking ladies' man Don E. Steiger, were both born somewhere in Tennessee. I never asked where specifically because I don't care. My father was in the Navy during World War II. After the Hiroshima bomb was dropped, my father came home and looked to California to start his civilian life. The first thing he did was marry my mother. The two of them started fulfilling every popular American dream of buying a home and raising a family. I was the beginning of their dream. My brother Eddie was born 11 months after me. My sister Anita, Sue, whom we call Sue, was born 1 year after him, completing the picture-perfect post-nuclear family. But, as we all know, things on the outside are seldom the same on the inside. The house in Hawthorne was beautiful enough, with a big sunny yard that bordered the Pacific Ocean. In my early years, when I was around 5, I remember playing with Eddie and Sue for hours in the California sunlight. Those afternoons of Eddie and I were wearing our newly bought Lawn Ranger cowboy hats while playing on the swing set or sitting on the front porch steps with our dungarees rolled up and at the bottom and sporting our duck cuts were happy ones. I really cannot remember any early childhood traumas. I guess the good Lord was saving them for when I got older. The only downer I remember early on was that when my brother was 6 and my sister was 4, they were still wetting the bed. My parents, clueless and frustrated, made them wear diapers. Eddie and Sue were embarrassed and humiliated by this. I would tell them not to worry about it, although in a strange sort of way I felt guilty that I was more normal than they were. This was something I hated seeing them experience, but I felt too powerless over the situation. Even then I remember wanting to take their problems as my own. Things in the house were otherwise generally calm. My father had a good job making airplane parts, and my mother stayed home most of the time and did her motherly chores. I did not notice a lot of drinking or fighting in the household during my early years, but as it was with most things in my youth, things changed quickly. Dun dun dun. Somewhere around my 7th birthday, the fight started. My father would come home from work and yell at my mother, who had been drinking all day. When my mother was drinking, she would usually be gone all day, coming home late and drunk, being the oldest at 7. I watched Eddie and Sue all day long, and some evenings the first thing I noticed on how this was affecting us was that there was never enough food in the house. Eddie and Sue would constantly ask me, not my parents because of their tempers, for something to eat again. I felt responsible to provide, so I decided to go into business at the ripe old age of 7. I knew if I didn't do something, nothing would change. I ventured out, going door to door, selling little wooden decorations called Mother's Little Helpers that I was making in our garage. The nickname was later used for the drug Valium, believed to calm a mother down for her daily stresses. Although I was never a mother, I would take enough Mother's Little Helpers in my day to make 100 mothers never experience stress again. These little wooden shelves went inside the cabinet under the sink. They held cleaning supplies and other kitchen materials, although my father never received any credit for the invention. Mother's Little Helpers are very common nowadays, but fortunately for me, not many people had heard of them back then. I really wanted to do something to save our family, which was in deep jeopardy, and to keep us fed in the house. My father was working, but between the bills and my mother spending all kinds of cash, we were in a tough shape. I was sick and tired of going to bed hungry. There were nights when I would lie in my bed and fantasize about hamburgers and ice cream, tears running down my cheeks. I became obsessed with making these things in the garage to sell. It was in the dark, oil-smelling garage, all by myself, that I would spend all my free time. Eddie and Sue were beginning to break by all the problems going on, crying endlessly and panicking. They wanted to know why our parents were fighting and were never home. I do my best to keep them calm, believing I had to try to fix the problem. One thing in my favor was that most of our neighbors were obliged to buy my product, so some out of interest, most out of pity, for the skinny 7-year-old kid lunging Mother's Little Helpers down the street. On a brighter note, there were some genuine Hollywood stars that routinely visited our home. Rod Steiger, Marlon Brando's brother in On the Waterfront, was my father's friend. He used to come over for dinner while on break from filming. Sometimes he would bring over such Hollywood newcomers as Steve McQueen, James Garner, Charles Bronson, and Clayton Moore, the Lone Ranger, with whom my father, a magician, would later after retirement work in Las Vegas. They would sit at the kitchen table and drink beer. Uncle Rod, as I would call him, and my father served in the Navy Air Corps. He told me WW2 was hell. A lot of people died or got wounded really bad. The guys never brought up the horrible word war in conversation. Dad mentioned a couple of men he served with. Was a gifted baseball player for the New York Yankees named Joe DiMaggio. And the other was a gentleman from the Boston Red Sox named by Ted Williams. My heart goes out to all the veterans who put their lives on the line, as well as to all the heroes who put the game of baseball on hold in order to serve their country. Uncle Rod used the GI Bill in 1944 to take acting classes in order to improve his opera singing. He told me he loved acting so much that he continued it as a career, becoming one of the most respected actors in Hollywood. I remember my father asking James Garner why they brought in another actor to play his brother on Maverick. His answer was that he could not remember his lines and therefore needed someone else in the scene so he could have more time to remember the words. They all howled at this. I was only 5, but I remember getting a big kick out of seeing them in my kitchen and later on television. All in all, these Hollywood actors were nice to me, but many of them still seemed a little weird. Our family also used to frequent the now famous Knoxbury Farm in Anaheim, a short drive. Sorry, thought that was a typo for a second. A short drive south of LA, which was owned by a close relative of my father. She started the place by selling pies to people and taking children for rides on a horse. Now it is a multi-million-dollar business. Riding the horses was perhaps the most fun I had as a kid. Eddie wasn't crazy about the horses, but Sue loved them as much as I did. I do not, however, remember anything about the pies. Page 5. My mother and father would drink in Corriganville, the place where a lot of Hollywood westerners were filmed. Some days I would go with my mother into the bar, my daily lunch consisting of Coca-Cola and potato chips. The bar was frequented by extras and stuntmen. I started hanging around a little bit with some of the stuntmen's kids. We would go behind the bar and jump off things in the parking lot. I loved it and really believed this was where I wanted to stay for the rest of my life. I felt a certain sense of community and well-being. I felt Corriganville was where I belonged. When I was 7, my parents began going out more, both together and alone. They would have strange babysitters take care of us, sometimes for days at a time. There were a couple of rough women who used to come over, drunk as skunks, and decided we were dirty children who needed a good cleaning. They would make the 3 of us strip naked in our backyard, and then turn the cold water of the garden hose on us, the neighbors watching, some laughing and some shaking their heads in dismay. Eddie and Sue's screams will always stay with me, as much as I have learned that I can't be truly free until I forgive those who had wronged me. Still, I have a difficult time forgiving everyone, especially these sadistic babysitters. When they got tired of cleaning the outside of us, they made us eat soap and swallow it. Okay. Saying it would clean our souls. Sometimes I vomited up soap for hours. Once after they locked us in the bedroom, I thought Eddie was dying because he violently gagged on the floor next to me. One time after my mom unexpectedly dropped off at their house in resentment, they fed me mealworms with my cereal. Okay. Afterwards, I could never eat cereal for many years. Experiences like this would make me feel unloved and unwanted, of being in the way and taking up space that someone else deserved. I began to feel that I would be better off dead. I was afraid if I complained to my parents, these women would do something even worse to us. So we kept quiet, something no child who is being abused should ever have to do. But a man does not become a man right away. He is first a child. Page 6. All I could do was try to protect Eddie and Sue. I became their guardian at the age of 10. One day I found Sue crying on the front steps. She told me no one would show her how to tie her shoes. So I took the time to gently teach her what I had just recently learned myself. The three of us stuck together like glue. We had to, for we had no idea what was going to happen next. We eventually lost the house because my father got laid off, my mother up and left us, and they were later divorced. My father had custody, my mother never asked for it, and we had to move. My father brought us to live in a series of small dingy apartments, a far cry from a beautiful home in Hathorne. And there's some pictures of his father in the Navy during World War II. And Navy buddies left and right of him in another picture. Page 8, there's some more pictures. My mother in Hathorne, California. And there's another picture, my first drink, at least recorded on a photo. Holy shit, he's a baby. 18 months, he had his first drink. I would show you guys the pictures, but I doubt they come out nice. That's a baby right there, having his first drink. That's crazy. There he is. That's his mother on that other page. There's his mother. That's him. Fucking nuts. Some more pictures of the actors. Alright, I'm not gonna go through all of these pictures, but you can't really see them too well on the live. And some more pictures of Thanksgiving. And if you want to look at the pictures, I highly recommend buying the book, Suck Up the Purple Buttermilk. You can get it on Amazon. I'll post the link in the description. Chapter 2. A boxer named Jack and a dog named Rocket. Always make the best of things. Sing the chorus and the verse, because unless you're breathing your last breath, things could always be worse. That's a good quote. That's a good quote. Eddie and I were in school. Sue wasn't. In what is perhaps my biggest argument for the dangers of enabling, my experience with school systems was of being pushed on so quickly that I didn't have time to clap erasers. Even though I could not read or write, they moved me along. First of all, the psychological trauma was set up from the get-go. I was always spending a month in this school and a month in that school, that I felt different from all the other kids. Some teachers would get mad because I was so behind the other kids, therefore a few just passed me on. I was in the 5th grade and still couldn't read or write. The schools in Hathorne were busy and overcrowded. Being a great con man from an early age, I fiddled and diddled enough to advance each year to the next grade. This had a lot to do with the fact that I was a real good drawer and not so bad storyteller. I remember my 4th grade teacher asking me to bring a piece of paper home to my mother. It was the first time I distinctly recall not just feeling different, but actually realizing I was different. I told the teacher I have no mother to bring this home to. When I said that out loud, I understood the sadness in the statement and started to cry. One day, when I came home from school, my father was waiting for Eddie and me. Sue was packed and ready to go. It had been decided that we were going to stay with our mother. It seems Dad could no longer afford to support us. My mother was living across town with a thug boxer named Jack and a sheepdog named Rocket. Jack was the kind of boxer that Rocky was at the beginning of the first movie, the one where he fought Spider Rocco. And in fact, Jack could easily have been Spider Rico. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'll just call him Spider himself. Jack was an alcoholic, like my mother. But he treated us as well as he possibly could. My idea of being treated well back then was that he never hit us, nor he was mean to us in any violent or sexual way. Damn. If that means being nice to you, then shit. His scared face was pushed in, and his lips were permanently swollen. This scared Sue until she got used to his appearance. It seems Jack was in the middle of suing the boxing commission for $100,000 for getting hurt in the ring or something like that. He never came clean with the whole story. I certainly felt out of place living there. We were new in school. Once again, I felt different and alone. The teachers would send me to the dunce room and say I was learning impaired and basically labeled me retarded. No one looked at my home life. No one had time. My mother was drinking every day now with Jack as her constant drinking partner. One night I asked Jack and my mom how to spell my name. I was 10 years old and hadn't learned yet. My mother was screaming over my shoulder how much of a moron and a loser I was. Jack was as drunk as my mother, and he joined in the name calling. I figured as long as they were yelling at me instead of Eddie or Sue, that it would be all right. But I still needed to get my name on the top of that paper. Finally, Jack grudgingly showed me, swearing and shaking his head at me. Shoved me? Grudgingly shoved me? It says showed me. But Jack's sheepdog was one of my closest childhood companions. One day, I was riding my bike with Rocket faithfully by my side. I watched in horror when I saw him run into the street and bounce off a car bumper. For a few minutes, I just sat there on my bike in shock. I didn't know exactly what was going on, but when I cut through the crowd that had gathered, I saw Rocket lying on the pavement, bleeding. A policeman came out of nowhere and stooped down to check on my dog. In one quick move, he pulled out his pistol and shot Rocket in the head. Bro, this is so fucked up. It was explained to me later that the policeman had put Rocket out of his misery. I couldn't believe that was necessary. This was the first time I had ever seen that kind of violence, and it would not be the last. Around Christmas that year, Jack got his boxing settlement, a lump sum of cash. It is an alcoholic's dream. So Jack and Ma excitedly dropped us kids off at their friend's house and went out for a night on the town. 2 or 3 days later, we couldn't figure out why they hadn't come to pick us up. Eddie thought they took all the money and ran away. After a week went by, Sue kept asking if our parents were ever coming back. I had no answer. I only kept telling them everything would be fine. Finally, the strangers with whom we were staying told us that Jack and my mother had been in a car accident that same night. They dropped us off. The car had flipped over several times. My mother was thrown from the car and it had landed on her. Jack had broken his back, but was expected to live. Mother wasn't which was why they finally told us what was going on. It was Christmas Eve when we found out the news. My mother had a blood clot in her head and was in critical condition. They eventually let us see her in the hospital, but she was in a coma and could not respond. Looking at her shaved head and tubes running up her nose, I felt angry. It was supposed to be a great Christmas that year. Jack and my mother had some money, and she promised us tons of presents. It was watching my mother live this kind of life that angered me more than anything else. Christmas morning, we watched my mother's friends' kids open up the gifts as we lay on our blankets on the floor. They did give us small presents, but I was too angry and hurt to appreciate it. Addie and Sue looked to me for answers I could not give. We stayed with this family for 2 months. They weren't bad people, but we always felt we were intruding. We were then placed in a foster home for a year. It was here that I got caught playing with fire. I was angry and wanted to go to my own house. The grandfather of the house, this old burly man with 2 fingers on his left hand, kicked my butt for playing with matches. After that, I never played with matches again until I was 17. The argument that hitting a child does not work did not apply to this incident. The bus to and from school drove right past my mother's house, where the totaled car sat on the front yard. Every day I saw that smashed up car, and every day it hurt. Jack got out of the hospital sporting a full body cast. We went back to stay with Jack for a little while, but obviously he was not in a parenting position. In fact, the only position he was in was straight on his back. It was decided we should go back with our father, and I was psyched. During this period, we were not attending school. Again, no one bothered to find us and make us go. When my mother was released from the hospital, she got rid of Jack and his body cast and shacked up with the guy named Melvin, whom she apparently met at the hospital. When she settled into Melvin's house, my father took us back to live with her. My father took us back to live with her. That might be a typo. To live with him. I asked my father why we couldn't just stay with him. Or maybe... Now I'm confused. He told me he didn't have enough money to support himself. Maybe it should say my father gave us back to live with her. He told me he didn't have enough money to support himself, never mind anyone else. The 2 things I remember about Melvin were that he had a decent house in Riverbank and had epileptic seizures all the time. This scared Eddie and Sue, but they still preferred to stay with our mother instead of Dad. My mother would go out drinking and leave us home with Melvin. He would have a violent seizure on the kitchen floor and not know where he was for 6 hours, wandering around in a daze. Other times Melvin would go out and my mother would have other men over, fooling around with them right in front of me. I would still nurture her back to health whenever her enlarged liver acted up or her head ached. Sometimes my mother would break out in a fit of rage and beat me. She would choose me for a variety of reasons. I was the oldest, and I looked like my father. The object of her beatings was to make me cry. When I didn't, she would beat me harder. I remember Eddie and Sue watching my mother beating me with a belt, with blood running down my ears. They were screaming, "Cry, Donnie, cry, Donnie." I always waited until I wore my mother out and returned to my room before I bawled. Needless to say, I wanted to go back with my father, but Eddie and Sue were willing to stick it out with my mother and Melvin. I couldn't understand why. We were with Melvin and my mother the day my sister almost drowned behind Melvin's house, were a series of canals which every now and then filled up with water. There were cement bridges and had about a half-inch space at the top, through which debris could float. While playing on the bridge during a family picnic, Sue fell into the canal. Eddie and Melvin had no idea how to swim. My mother, who couldn't swim a lick either, yelled at the top of her lungs, "Donnie, Donnie, what are we going to do? Donnie." Again, at age 12, I was responsible for taking care of everything. She did not yell for Mel. It was my job, so I jumped into the canal, not caring if I lived or died, because I was only concerned for Sue. I remember seeing on television how some New York cop had grabbed a guy waiting to commit suicide by jumping off the Brooklyn Bridge. In doing so, he almost sacrificed his own life. When asked why he would jeopardize his own existence for that of a stranger, he replied, saying in so many words, there was no thought process involved, only an instinct that tells you what needs to be done. Since Sue was not a stranger to me, I jumped into the canal thinking only of saving her at any cost. I found her totally submerged under the water, panicking. I swam under her and put my shoulder under her feet, and with all my strength pushed her towards the shore. She flew to the side of the canal and Melvin grabbed her. She lay on the shore, puking water and gasping for air. That was the day I learned how to swim. A little on the job training. Shortly after this incident, my father came to visit. I missed him and wanted to go back to living with him. I was sick of hunting my mother down at the bars and begging $5 off her for food. I was definitely sick of Melvin and his attacks. Page 20. Sometimes she and Melvin would leave us alone for weeks at a time. One day, a gas stove blew across the room as we tried to cook English muffins. We had no idea about pilot lights or anything like that. If I could find my mother, we stole bread and bologna from the market. Eddie was a better thief than Sue or myself, but we all knew how to do what we needed to do to survive. When my father came to visit, I begged him to take us back, and he always said no. I pretended to accept his answer, yet deep down I knew that he wasn't leaving without me. When no one was looking, I hid under the floorboards in the back of his car. After my father drove on the highway for about an hour, I peeped my head up. Maybe I wasn't a good thief as Eddie, but I was learning street smarts. I knew Eddie and Sue would be all right because for some ungodly reason they wanted to stay with Ma. My father couldn't believe he had a stowaway with him on this way to Los Angeles. If I had known what LA would be like, I would probably have stayed with Mom. Holy shit. And there's the school pictures. Left to right, myself, Susie, and Eddie. Young Donnie. So that's Donnie. That's Donnie, that's Sue, and that's his brother Eddie. Even though Sue is the youngest child. What a story. What a story. Heartbreaking. And we are going to leave off on chapter 3. Welcome to the jungle. No time to waste, no time to run. Peace of mind I never had done. The future's uncertain. Hand me that gun. Who am I? My father's son. That was Chapter 1 and 2, Suck Up the Purple Buttermilk of Donnie Steiger. So far, very intense. Oh man. What a read. We will pick up with Chapter 3 on the next iteration of this Let's Read. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, feel free to leave a like, comment down below what future books you'd like us to read, and if you want to buy this book, you can. I will link the Amazon link where you can go and buy it in the bio below if you're on YouTube at The One Who Cares. That is all I got for you guys tonight. Thanks for watching. If you remember anything, stay positive, stay healthy, make wise decisions. You're gorgeous. Peace out, y'all. We're out of here.
What picks me up is your loving soul. And every time that I come home, I get to see you in your fancy clothes. But if it's time ever has to come to an end, don't you cry, just smile because it happened. That's our family, you plus me, with a barbecue in the backyard, bunch of crazy kids that's running around. And that's our family, you plus me, three puppies, that's a barbecue in the backyard. I'm a cowboy, living like a rock star. Girl, come sit by the campfire. A moment with you is what I desire. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to start a family too. A million miles from where I want to be, but I'm still trying to start a family. Trying to change the world with you. The truth is, I wish I was a better man. Wish I never hurt again. Wanna be a cowboy free. Barbecue in the backyard, bunch of crazy kids that's running around. I'm a cowboy living like a rock star. I've been really low, almost made it to the top, but I came up short. But I'll never give up, no, I'm gonna go far. I'll do it for the ones that never made it at all. I've been really high, I've been really low, almost made it to the top, but I came up short. But I'll never give up, no, I'm gonna go far. I'll do it for the ones that never made it at all. That's our family, you plus me, with a barbecue in the backyard, bunch of crazy kids that's running around.